Hi everybody. Today I'd like to do a little Lightroom tutorial, and I'm going to go through a few images that I shot on a recent trip, and there's nothing super special about these, but I figured this would be a good place to do a tutorial and get into some Lightroom edits for those of you who may be interested in working on your post-processing skills. So here we are in Lightroom. By the way, if you don't have Lightroom, remove my watch. A lot of these same techniques can be used in other applications. Lightroom is pretty powerful. It has a lot of different ways that you can do the same thing. But you can still do a lot of things in some of the applications that might be included with your computer, or some free applications that you can download to edit photos. So don't feel like you have to have Lightroom to do some of these things, but it's just the program I have, it's what I use, and feel free to apply these things to any other program that has the same functionality. I'm going to be using some keyboard shortcuts and things like that, but the screen capture software I have will show you those shortcuts at the bottom of the screen. Because I am using the internal mic on the computer, I'll try to keep my keyboard typing soft. So here we are. So in Lightroom, there's different modules. Right now we're in the library module, which lets you sort and tag. It lets you organize your photos. And in order to actually edit the photos, you have to go into the develop module. So the shortcut for that is D. Here we are. And over on the right here is where we can do all of our edits. And I typically work from the top and go down. Now I'm trying to remember which camera I had with me on this trip. I think it was the D200. I tend to travel and use the D200 as my walk around sort of fun camera. That's my older camera, and I tend to reserve my D810 for my paid work, things like that, portfolio work. I don't like to travel with it. It's more expensive, it's newer, it's how I make some money, so the D200 is more than adequate, especially just for walking around in nature. I don't have to worry about damaging it, things like that. It's incredibly well built, but also very cheap if I need to replace it. I believe I've seen D200s on eBay for as low as $150. It's an excellent camera though for its age. So this was shot with the D200. Normally I'll go in and I have a custom profile up here for my D810, but I don't have one yet for the D200. I just haven't made one. But for landscape and street photography, I've found that the Adobe profile is adequate. The color is not quite as important as when I'm shooting portraits or architecture, interiors. So I'll leave the profile alone. You can go in here and find ones that match your camera body. This set is actually made for the D2X, I believe, which is the bigger brother of the D200. Anyway, so I like to work top down usually, but the first thing I'll do after setting my color profile is I'll go to lens corrections, and it looks like on this, let me go to my EXIF data real quick, switch back into this module. And down here it'll tell you what camera. There it is, D200. And I was actually using the kit lens that originally came with this camera, the 18-70. And for a kit lens, it's really not bad. But you will want to check these remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. And that'll automatically fix some distortion and some chromatic aberration, which is sort of colors showing up where you don't want them to show up, especially along the corners. You'll get some strange magentas and greens and things. You don't want that, purples. So up here you can see I shot this at ISO 100. I was at 60 millimeters. My aperture was f11, and my shutter speed was 0.4 seconds, so about a half a second. If you're at all interested in landscape photography, I highly recommend investing in a decent, lightweight tripod. It doesn't weigh a lot to carry around. You can sling it over your back in the bag it comes in. And it's just worth having if you're going to be out in nature, because you never know when you might want to photograph some moving water or a beautiful sunset. Maybe there's not a lot of light. So I was using the tripod here. Don't love the shot. I'm going to move on, but something worth mentioning. So you'll notice a lot of these photos were shot at slower shutter speeds, which will blur the water but keep the rest of the scene fairly sharp. Now let's move along. I don't love this. Here's one I edited a while back, and you can see this was shot at a half a second, and you get that nice silky flow to the water. The trees and the leaves remain sharp. That's about all the zoom you get out of 10 megapixels. You can zoom in farther, it's okay. Okay, so I already edited that one. Now this is one, it's not the world's greatest waterfall photo, but I would like to edit this. I think I can make something somewhat interesting out of it, but there were people moving in front of me as I was trying to shoot. There were a lot of people there, and I was with my kids, so I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time camped out there waiting for a perfectly clean shot. So I took 2 shots. Here's the second, with the person in 2 different places. And what I'm going to do is composite these images together in Photoshop to eliminate that person from the photo. So in this shot, I'm going to go to my lens corrections, check those boxes I talked about earlier. I'm going to go ahead and leave the color profile alone. I'm going to try my white balance here. So sometimes I'll use the eyedropper and click on a section of water. That'll give you a decent white balance starting point. And something we can always tweak later. All right. So you can always press this key to show your before and after. I can't remember if that's called a / or a backslash. I think it's a / which I've never understood. All right, exposure is decent here. Some of the shadow areas are a little bit dark, so I'm going to lift the shadows a little bit in this. Not too much, just a little bit. Let's go right in there. A lot of things in photo editing are sort of to taste. We'll pull back on my whites just a touch, and we'll add some more contrast back in later. Bump the clarity a little bit. This is mid-tone contrast. If I go too far, you can really see the effect, but it can be overdone easily, so just do a little bit to taste. There we go. And I think that's starting to look pretty good for a raw file there. You can always do your before and after. Might pull up the shadows just a little more detail on those rocks. I usually will apply a tone curve, but I'm going to save that for Photoshop. It's another way of adjusting your luminance values. But you can also use it to adjust your red, green, and blue values separately if you wish. And I actually do that quite a bit. Let's go to detail and apply a little bit of sharpening here. Again, you can add more in Photoshop. Because I'm going to be compositing in Photoshop, I can save that to the last step. So this is just a little bit of sharpening just to clean up whatever the lens is softening, the anti-aliasing filter in the camera is softening. And by the way, not all cameras have anti-aliasing filters, so you don't have to Some cameras are sharper, the ones that don't have those. But this one does have one, and it's looking kind of crooked. So go down here to transform, and you have a bunch of different tools, but in a landscape shot, it doesn't always work that great. So I'm just going to press R to go to my crop. I'm going to do a little bit of adjusting here. Let me zoom in on these bricks and see what's going on. Let's see what's going on here. Yeah, I think we're a little bit. That's looking better. And I'd actually like this squared up to me, so I'm going to grab a horizontal slider here and move it until the waterfall's kind of squared up. Enter, constraint crop, and you can turn on and off and see what's happening. Alright. This is not going to be my final crop, but this is good for now. So I mentioned before that I'm going to composite two photos together, this one and this one, and that'll allow me to remove the person in there. Although there is something cool to this effect down here. But, because I had the adjustments applied to one and not the other, but they were shot with exactly the same settings, the same composition, and my camera was in the same spot, I can take the settings from one photo, shift click to the other photo to select that as well, and I can sync all the settings I just made. So now if I flip between the two, you'll notice that pretty much all the settings are the same. I probably bumped my tripod a little bit, because you'll notice the composition's a little bit different, but I think we can fix that in Photoshop. So let's select both photos, go to Edit In, and open as layers in Photoshop. What this will do is it will put both photos into one file for me, on top of one another, and then I can start my work. Once they've loaded up, I'm going to go ahead and select both, and let's see if we can fix this alignment issue automatically. So we'll go to Auto Align Layers, we'll choose Auto, click OK. And what Photoshop will do is it will attempt to align those images based on the information that it finds. And let's go ahead and turn off the top one, and you can see it did a great job. The trees are now perfect. As I turn off one, you can see the shot below it is lined up perfectly. It doesn't always work this well, but in this case it did work very well, so let's be thankful we didn't have to tinker around with trying to move them and align them. Now, taking care of this person is actually going to be very easy, and it really doesn't matter too much which shot I choose to remove him from. And I'm just trying to decide where I like I think I'm just going to move him from this shot. So what we'll do is we're going to create a black layer mask which will hide everything in that image. Actually, let's do this. Let's do a white layer mask. So what do I want to do? Yeah, no, we'll do a black one. So we got a layer mask, and I will invert it. And we're going to brush this guy out from the bottom image. So let's take a white brush. And by the way, the B key will select your brush. D will select white and black as your foreground, background colors. And I'm going to choose 100% opacity. The hotkey for opacities are up here. You can go 10%, 20, 30, and 0 is 100. If you hold down Shift and do those, it'll adjust your flow, which is very nice. It's handy. Very soft brush, and we're just going to brush right over the person that we want to remove. So this may seem like magic, but it's actually very simple. All I've done is taken the two images and stacked them. And because the person's in a different spot, here I've hid the layer mask on this one. Because he's in a different spot, you can just paint over where he is on the other image. And then you get a flawless shot like this. Now you notice the alignment gave us some dead space over here because it had to move the photos around in order to get everything nice. And I'm going to crop anyway, so I don't know if I love this crop. Let's press C to go to the crop tool. And I'll hold down Shift to keep the aspect ratio the same as I move it. If you don't hold down Shift, it gives you a freehand crop. And let's go in, just get rid of that dead space first and hit enter. Let's see what this looks like. I think it's decent, but I think there's a little bit too much gray sky and stuff up top. It was a very overcast day, not particularly interesting sky. And the subject here are the rocks in the foreground, and of course the waterfall through the trees. So I'm going to go with a bit of a squattier crop. Maybe not a square, but maybe something like a 4x5. So pull this down. And I just kind of do it to taste. I like some of the lines in the trees. I don't want to completely get rid of that. I also like where this tree down here is anchored into the ground. So let's try that. See how that feels? Yeah. It's feeling pretty good. I like how the two trees are framing the shot. If you come in a little bit on the left here, just there. And you could spend all day figuring out your crop, but I'm liking this pretty well. I may have gone a little too far. Let's just scooch it out a little bit. Oh, too much. Who knows? I'm probably back to where I started, but like I said, you can spend all day doing that. And here I am, spending all day doing that. Let's go right there. Yeah, it feels right. Of course, this is going to feel different to everybody. All right, now I'm going to add some selective brightening and darkening of the image. You can always apply contrast globally and it'll brighten your brights and darken your darks. But I don't want to lose all the rock information. If I start adding contrast, that's all going to go dark again. So I'm going to selectively dodge and burn, which means selectively brighten and darken respectively. And those terms come from the days of the dark room. So I like to use curves layers. You can dodge and burn in a number of different ways, but I'm going to pull down on my curve, which will darken. I'm going to invert the mask to hide it, and I'll name that burn. Then I'm going to create another curves layer and do the opposite. I'm going to bring up my curve, which will brighten. Again, I'm inverting the mask to black, which hides it. I'll name that dodge. And I'm just going to group those together. D and B, dodge and burn. So let's burn. Because I've hidden my mask, you can't see the effect of the burn, the darkening. That's the whole point. We want to only brush it into specific spots. So using a white brush, I'm going to go to about 30% opacity. Very soft brush. I'm just going to selectively darken the corners to give myself a subtle vignette. Up in here, this area is too bright, drawing my eye away from the subject. And again, you can do all this stuff to taste. I think I'm going to do right there. I do like this glow in the trees back here, so I'm going to my dodge layer. I'm going to selectively brighten a little bit of that glow. Just a little bit, some of that backlit tree over there. I'm definitely going to brighten up this waterfall a little bit. And that's where the eye needs to go. And I may just brighten up some of these shiny parts on the rocks down here. Generally, when you're dodging and burning, you can find your highlights in the image and brighten those up, and then find your lowlights and darken those down. But again, you have control because you can choose exactly where to do the effect. Let's go back to burn, and we can darken a couple of these rocks. Just give them a bit more 3D texture, and when I go and turn this on and off later, you'll really see the big difference it makes. It's all to taste. Painting in a way. Alright, so let me turn this off, and then there it is on. I think it's a big difference. I'm going to burn down a little bit of this middle part of the waterfall just to get some contrast back in it. That's looking good. Get in here, some contrast back. Yeah. And let's get some of these cascades and brighten them up. And this was shot at, I think when I I remember seeing my data, it was an eighth of a second, which is not terribly long shutter speed for moving water, but this waterfall was moving pretty fast, so it did blur quite a bit of the water. You really see the silky effect. So I'm going to save that. I want to get a couple more highlights down on these rocks, because why not? Okay. On and off. Huge difference. That looks rather flat, and that just pops. So I'm liking it. I think the color is a little boring to me. So I'm going to do a bit of color toning. I'm going to add a solid color layer, and this is kind of fun. You can get creative. I'm going to pick a color that's kind of warm. It was an overcast, dreary day, so I want to just warm this up and make it feel a little bit more like late golden afternoon. Let's go somewhere in kind of the orangish zone. Grab something here. And I'm going to change my blend mode to color. Obviously that's a bit much, but then I can lower my opacity. Let's go somewhere around like maybe 8%. Turn that off, on. It's very subtle. That's nice. Liking that. Let's bump up the opacity a little bit and see what. That's too much. Let's go like 12% or something. Yeah. Yep. I'm liking that. Let's go 9%. So you can also play around with the blend mode. Sometimes I like overlay because it gives a little more contrast. Color takes away a little of the contrast sometimes. You could go soft light, hard light, and if you want to really see the effects, you could up the opacity and start playing around with these. See the difference between overlay and color? Subtle. Actually, color looks like it has a little bit more contrast in this particular one. And we'll bring down, again, just bring this opacity just kind of to taste. Let's go there. I like that. That's looking nice. That's looking pretty nice. I'm going to take it off the rocks a little bit. So you have this mask here. I'm going to brush black over that to hide. 30% opacity, just a little bit. Take out a little of the warmth from those rocks. But leave it up in these trees and in the water itself. Brush out a little bit of it. There it is on and off. I feel like the water shouldn't be super orange. I like it in the trees for sure. So that image is looking pretty much done. You can always add some sharpening here. I'm stamping all to a new layer. I'm going to go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. You can use this little square to zoom in on different parts of the image and check your sharpening. That's too much sharpening. Let's bring this down. Let's just go somewhere around 50%. Hit OK. And I think that'll do it. Looking at this now, I could have dodged along that tree highlight a little bit, bring a little more texture in that tree, but this is really quite good for my purposes. And I'm going to go ahead and exit, and because I opened this from Lightroom, it'll actually take me right back. When I go to Lightroom, it'll save that image right there, which is nice. You don't have to do any tinkering around to try to find your image. So if we do a little before and after here, if I pull this up next to one of the other ones, I'll show you what that looks like. Here's one of our before images on the left, and our final image on the right. You really see the difference there. Okay, let's try one more. I'm going to do, I like that church. I like the ethereal quality of it, but I just wish I'd had a slightly better shooting position. I like this mistiness here. I wish there was a little more mist there. I was there a little bit too late in the morning. Let's try the church. So we're going to the develop module, I'm going to go kind of fast here. So lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration, enable profile corrections. This is the same lens and camera combinations before. Let's grab a white balance off of this. But you have to realize that there's a lot of trees and green reflecting back onto that white of that church. So you don't want to completely zap it. So it gave me a plus 11 on magenta. So I'm just going to go down to like 6 or something. Just bring a little bit more green back into that. I'm going to play with my white balance here and just find a nice spot. I don't want to go too warm with this because I like the mysterious quality of that. Just kind of right in there. And here's where this transform is going to come in handy. This church, I feel like we're kind of leaning here. I was probably shooting this freehand at this point. Yeah, 30th of a second. I'm just going to click a vertical correction, see how it does. Use my grid to check. Click it did a pretty good job there. There's our before, there's our after. And then I'm definitely going to crop this. I think this would look good as a 4x5 as well. I want to get rid of some of the stuff down there. Yeah, this might be a square shot. Let's see. It could be an Instagram shot. Yeah, that kind of sucks the life out of it. Let's go 6x7. It's good to play around with different aspect ratios and get used to what they look like and the different mood that you get out of them. So I definitely want some more water. But I don't like this distraction down here, so we are going to remove that eventually. Let's go, I like some of the height of the trees. Let's go right in there, feels good. Not the most amazing composition in the world, but I think it'll suffice. Let's try this. Just not loving the church smack dab in the middle there. I don't know. This is where you can really bring your own vision to these things. Probably just end up where I started again. I didn't really nail this shot in camera. My kids were running around and I didn't want them falling into the water, so I was kind of rushing. It's not the most amazing light or anything like that, but it was kind of a neat scene and I wanted to remember it, so I took a picture. There's a couple distractions we're going to want to get rid of. I want to get rid of that mirror, which is just, there's a road back there and there's probably a curve and it's so drivers can see what's happening. But it feels a little anachronistic. I want this to feel like it's back in time. That mirror just kind of kills it for me. Again, I'm just kind of gravitating to a lower crop here. Let's go with that. I like a little of that reflection in the water. Sorry about that. Let's figure this out. There we go. Alright. Color is looking decent. It's very flat. So I'm actually going to, instead of adding contrast, I'm just going to pull up my whites a little bit. And I'm watching my histogram up in the top corner here. You make sure you don't clip your whites. But I don't want to go 100% white either. I like a little of the haziness. And let me pull my blacks down a little bit. There's a little contrast in there. Just a little bit, and you don't want to go too far. Look at the difference. Look how flat that is before and after. The greens really start popping, but it almost makes it too happy. Let's see what it looks like as black and white. Ooh. There's something to that. Let's see what happens if we just desaturate this a bit without going black and white. That might be more the look I'm going for. So let's add a little bit of clarity. Just a touch, don't go crazy. I'm thinking the whites are too white. No, maybe not. I know what it is. It's the greens that I don't like. So let's go down here to the HSL sliders. And I'm going to go to, actually I'm going to go to color, and we're going to go to the greens. And we're going to take the saturation and pull it down a little bit. I'm also going to take the luminance, which is another word for brightness. I'm going to pull the luminance down of the greens. And you can just kind of go all the way to see what it looks like. Go all the way each direction. and then find the spot where it feels right. They just felt way too bright. Come down a little bit. Let's go to the aqua. Is there any aqua creeping in there? No. Turn that on and off. And you know, you may like it before, but everybody has their own feeling, so I'm going to go kind of in there. I don't want this image super saturated. I want it to feel a little bit older. Let's go in there. A little bit depressed, but still hovering with that black and white, but I feel like the church kind of gets lost in there, so this helps separate the church from the trees, the fact that they're different colors. Alright, let's go to detail. I think our sharpening is fine for this. Go to 50. And did we already do this? We did. Okay. Let's pull this shot into Photoshop. And I'm going to quickly get rid of these distractions and show you how easy it is. So I like to do all of my cloning and healing on a separate layer. So Command-Shift-N gives you a new layer, and we'll just name that clone. And that way, if I screw up or I need to edit it or mask something out, it's really easy because it's on another layer. I'm going to grab my clone stamp, and I'm going to find a section. And that, what is that, a rhododendron back there? I'm going to find a section that looks similar to that, just clone in. And I think I can actually get away with some of this darker area by cloning in, but let's see. Let's make that brush soft, 100% opacity, and I'm going to just grab some area up here and gently clone in. And let's just go there and zoom out. It's looking a little too same there. Let me bring some of this darkness in here so it doesn't look quite so similar. I think if you zoom out, it kind of works. Obviously, we know something's missing there, but you would, at this viewing distance, just think that that's like a dark shaded portion of the forest. Now let's take care of this. You can do a couple different things here. You could try the clone stamp. You could try the healing brush. I'm going to use the patch tool. And what you do is you just select the big region around the thing you're trying to get rid of and drag it to another area that's similar. So let's just go in here. And you can play with the structure and the color. Until it looks right. Deselect, not loving that. Let's undo that whole thing. I'm just going with the, oops. Deselect. Go away. Let's put the clone stamp. And I'm just going to select different areas to clone in here. You always want to select a couple different areas because if you just select one big region, it starts to look fake. Let's put some of this there, that there. Let's go up in here. Some of this. And you might be thinking, why are you doing all this? Well, I used to think that you shouldn't do any heavy post-processing on your images. And then, as I got more into it, I realized that, you know, sometimes simple little things can really make an image much stronger. So, I do it a little bit more now. But, you do it to your taste. And if you don't like it, there the patch tool worked really well. clean up a little bit around the edges on that. There we go. You know, I usually won't try to remove anything to change the intent of the image, but it's just cleaning up distractions. You know, if I was shooting this for an architectural client, first of all, it would be a much different image, but I'd clean up things like that leaf on the roof and a little brown spot there, which is probably another leaf, but for this shot, it can stay. And it's not my sharpest image. I was shooting handheld at 1/30th. Again, my kids are running around, but for the type of image that it is, it doesn't need to be tack sharp. So that's that. I'm just going to do a simple vignette on this image. We're going to pull down our curves. Again, black mask, hide it all. Take a white brush, big soft brush, 30% opacity to start darkening the edges down. It helps to focus the eye into the center onto your subject. Turn on and off. You see what a big difference it does. So, huge difference. I'm just going to darken down some of that grass a little bit. It's still too bright. I'm liking that. Darken the roof a bit. I think, you know, for what it is, it's not bad. I'm not going to add any sharpening to this because I don't think I'm going to use this image for anything, but I may throw it up on Instagram at some point. And at that resolution, you're really not going to see anything. Once they compress the heck out of it. But I may as well just add some light sharpening here. It's easy enough. Just go in and do it. Save. So that's it. Those are a couple, maybe not quick techniques, but a couple different techniques you can use. And you certainly don't have to use Photoshop to do the cloning. I find it a little bit more powerful, a little bit easier. But you can do cloning in Lightroom here. You have a clone, you have a heal. It's not quite as customizable, but it certainly works well for simple things. For example, if you did want to get rid of a leaf, you choose your healing brush and just click on it, and it'll automatically choose an area that it thinks matches. And if you don't like the area it chooses, you can always pick a different one, and you'll notice there that you can kind of get it perfect. And then press Q again, that goes away. So it's pretty easy to use. I'm going to undo that. You can also add vignettes down here under Effects, and just drag down to add your vignette. And there's all sorts of different options. Obviously, this looks it's a little much. You can go the opposite direction if you want to go for that look. So I'm going to double click that, which resets it. There's a couple things you can do. Let's look at this before and after, side by side. Very, very subtle. But as you can see on the left, we got rid of the mirror, we got rid of some distractions. I just did some light dodging and burning, which is almost not noticeable. But you can tell that the one on the left does draw your eye to the church a little bit more. Feels a little less flat. I think that'll be it. I hope you enjoyed this. And looking forward to definitely sharing some more editing techniques with you in the future. I'll leave you with those images. 2 quick edits there. Have a good night.